Okay, so good afternoon. Chalo, let's start the class now. In the last class, we have completed with what? Capital and revenue items we have completed. Take a fresh page, write unit number 4. Take a fresh page, write unit number 4. Contingent assets and liability. Contingent asset and liability. Okay, now before we go and discuss something, first you tell me what is the meaning of the word contingent? In a common language, you tell me the meaning of the word contingent. How do you understand the word contingent? Normal, general English. Any idea what is contingent? Anything which may or may not happen is called contingent. Which may or may not happen is called contingent. Okay, say for example like this, there was a weather prediction. Tomorrow there will be a rain. You know, in Telangana there is a weatherman called Telangana weatherman. He is very famous in social media. What predict చేస్తూ ఉంటాడు, tomorrow there will be a rain, tomorrow there will be a heavy sun, 43 degrees, 47 degrees, 50 degrees touch అవుతుందని predict చేస్తూ ఉంటాడు. Okay, so like that, will it happen? May or may not be. Danne we call it as contingent. Okay, this is not accurate. This may or may not happen. ఈ contingent ki always remember there will be some past events. Past lo edo jarigindi, some past event has happened. Based on that, today we are estimating. Based on that, today we are estimating that in future something may or may not happen. In future something may or may not happen. That is called contingent. Okay, when this contingent things happen, two things will arise. One, cash inflows. Another one, cash outflow. Two things will happen. One is cash inflow, another one is cash outflow. What is cash inflow? What will happen in cash inflow? Ante if that happens, we will get the money. What is cash outflow? If that happens, money will go out. Okay, if cash inflow arises, that is called contingent asset. If cash flow arises, that is called contingent liability. So two things will happen there, contingent asset avachchu, contingent liability avachchu. Okay na? So there are some past events. Because of past events, today we are estimating that in future something may or may not happen. And another surprising twist is, which is not in control of organization. Which is not in control of organization. Ante mana chethilo em ledu. Say for example, tomorrow there will be a rain అని ఒక prediction చేశాం. As I told you, will rain happen or not? May or may not happen. If it has not happened, can you bring a rain? నీ కంట్రోల్ ఏమన్నా ఉందా? That is called contingent. Clear? An example. I sold goods to customer worth 10,000. Customer used such goods, but because of that, he got some side effects. He got some side effects. He sued us in court of law for 1 crore. He sued us because in court of law for 1 crore. Chappandi. Shall we pay or not? Shall we pay or not? What is the past event in this? The past event is sold goods. What is the present situation that has happened is side effects. Now what he did? He filed a case against us in the court of law. When our liability will arise? When the court gives a judgment that yes, you have to pay this 1 crore, then our liability will arise. It depends upon whether you win the case or you. When this is going to happen? Future uncertain event it is. Future uncertain event it is. In future, whether I lose, I'll win, I don't know. But there is a situation that is called contingent. Okay. So when I win, it is favor. When I lose, it is unfavorable. So when I win, it will become my asset. If I lose, it will become my liability. And both are not accurate kabatti. They are not part of financial statements. They are not part of financial statements. As that is not accurate, you should not be recording this. Recorded in books of accounts. You should not record in books of accounts. You should never write this in books of accounts because this is not accurate. Am I clear? But we learned one principle called conservatism, right? What that conservatism principle or prudence principle will tell you. Expect all possible losses and ignore all possible gains. Expect all possible losses and ignore all possible gains. That what is said by conservatism principle, which is known as conservatism or prudence. Okay, now because of this, when it is a contingent, this contingent are two. Either it can be an asset or it can be a liability. Liability should be recognized because of conservatism. Assets you can ignore. But liabilities also should be recognized only when you know that your liability will arise. Only when you know that your liability will arise. Okay, now again for this, there are three situations that will arise in your contingent liability. Contingent liability can be in three stages. First one, it is virtually certain. It is virtually certain. Ante pakka it will happen. Or happening chances are more than non-happening. Happening chances are more than, so virtually certain, pakka it will happen. So when you know that it is going to happen, our conservatism principle says be careful, be cautious, be ready. Yes or no? So for this what you should do? You should make a provision for that particular item. Like best example for that, provision for bad and doubtful debts. Why you make that provision for bad and doubtful debts? Because you know that pakka it will happen. Okay, na? probable or possible. Probable or possible అంటే non happening chances are more than happening. Non happening chances are more than happening. Okay, in such a cases you give a notes to accounts. Once you prepare your books of accounts, after that board of directors reports or some notes will be returned to your accounts. In that you mention a note saying that this is what has happened, a case has been filed against the company where we have to pay or we might have to pay అని ఒక నోట్స్ ఇచ్చేసాయి. క్లియర్? లాస్ట్ రిమోట్ అంటే 99% ఛాన్సెస్ ఆర్ దేర్, ఇట్ విల్ నాట్ హ్యాపెన్. 99% ఛాన్సెస్ ఆర్ దేర్, ఇట్ విల్ నాట్ హ్యాపెన్. సింప్లీ లా సేస్ ఇగ్నోర్. లైట్ తీసుకోండి, టెన్షన్ పడాల్సిన అవసరం లేదు. ఓకే, హియర్ హ్యాపెనింగ్ ఛాన్సెస్ ఆర్ 49%, నాన్ హ్యాపెనింగ్ ఛాన్సెస్ ఆర్ 51%. అంటే మోర్ వెయిటేజ్ ఎక్కడ ఉంది? నాన్ హ్యాపెనింగ్. జస్ట్ గివ్ ఏ నోట్, దట్ ఈస్ ఎనఫ్. అంటే ఒక ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ఇచ్చేయండి, ఎస్ దిస్ ఇస్ వాట్ హెస్ హ్యాపెండ్, ఇన్ ఫ్యూచర్ ఏ లయబిలిటీ మే అరైజ్. వర్చువల్లీ సర్టెన్ హ్యాపెనింగ్ ఛాన్సెస్ ఆర్ more than 51%, non happening chances are 49%. అంటే నాన్ హ్యాపెనింగ్ ఆర్ లెస్, హ్యాపెనింగ్ ఆర్ మోర్. సో డెఫినెట్లీ ఇట్ విల్ హ్యాపెన్ ఇన్ ఫ్యూచర్. గో ఫర్ ఏ ప్రొవిజన్ అంటే క్రియేట్ ఎ లయబిలిటీ. నౌ దిస్ క్రియేషన్ ఆఫ్ లయబిలిటీ ప్రొవిజన్ ఆల్సో ఈజ్ ఓన్లీ ఎన్ ఎస్టిమేట్. Is only a estimate. If you people remember, you create a provision for bad and doubtful debts at the rate of 10%. Do you think that that percentage is an accurate percentage? I said like this, depreciation I create on the asset 10%. Do you think that that percentage of depreciation that you create is an accurate percentage? No, it is only an estimate that you are estimating that this much worth of asset might come down, this much worth of the bad debts may not pay us. This is what is our estimate. Clear? So this is what? Making a provision. There is no accuracy. There is no accuracy. And it is not 100% accuracy. It is purely a estimate. Clear? This is what is provision. Then similarly you will get contingent assets. Contingent assets is positive, favorable for us. Contingent liability is negative, unfavorable for us. As I explained you, as per conservatism principle or prudence principle, we have to expect all possible and ignore all possible. So if you are going to get anything in future, a case padadra, case manam odipotla, we are going to win the case. ఏమవుతుంది అప్పుడు? అసెట్. మీరు ఏమైనా ప్రొవిజన్ చేయాలా? ఐ టోల్డ్ యూ దిస్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్, ఇఫ్ యూ రిమెంబర్, దెర్ వాజ్ అ డెటార్ హూ మెట్ విత్ అన్ యాక్సిడెంట్. గో టు టెంపుల్, ప్రే ద గాడ్ దట్ షుడ్ బి అలైవ్, లేకపోతే ఎంటైర్ అమౌంట్ గాన్. ఏ క్రెడిటార్ మెట్ విత్ అన్ యాక్సిడెంట్, పండగ చేసుకో. అప్పుడు కూడా టెంపుల్కి వెళ్ళొచ్చు, ఆడు ఎప్పుడు చేస్తాడా అని కోరుకోడు. ఎందుకు? యూ నీడ్ నాట్ పే హిమ్. సో లైక్ దాట్, when there is a loss you have to make a provision, when there is a gain you need not make a provision. Hence ikkada only two situations are enough. One, virtually certain, or three తీసుకోండి, probable and possible, same, and remote. In these two cases you can ignore. In these two cases you can ignore. Virtually certain, if it is going to happen also, don't write till it happens. You simply give a note. No need of any provision. Like in liability, we have to make a provision. But in asset, you need not make any provision. We have provision for bad and doubtful debts. We don't have provision for good and grateful debts. You don't have that. So don't worry about that. Endukante If there is any risk arises, you should be careful. If any good arises, you need not worry about it. Simply if you want, give a note to your accounts, or as I told you, board of directors will give a note on that. If you write, that is more than enough. Okay, so this is what is contingent ascertain liability, a simple concept. Okay, so if you want to see the summary, first one, contingent ante it may or may not happen. Okay, it is based on past events. These are not in the control of organization or enterprise, where it is may or may not happen based on the past events, not in the control of organization, where uncertain future events, where on that uncertain future events there may be outflow of cash or can be inflow of cash. Okay, contingent liability, contingent asset, two things will arise. Where we have to pay, it is a contingent liability. Where we have to receive, it is a contingent. For contingent liabilities, we have to create. For contingent asset, you can simply ignore, or you can give a simply notes. That's it. Okay, so the best examples for this is, in your intermediate, you people have learned bills of exchange. In intermediate, have you learned bills of exchange? No. Bills of exchange lo bills discounted and ఒకటి ఉంటుంది, where we have to pay to them in future. If that fellow doesn't pay, then you have to pay. Okay, no worries, we'll study now, don't worry about that. Okay, another best example I can give you, insurance. Why you take insurance? We take insurance to cover risk. We take insurance to cover risk. It may or may not happen. It may or may not happen. That is what is insurance is all about. Okay, based on the past events we have this, and in future it may or may not happen. This is the best example for contingent. Okay, so this is a small concept called contingent. చూడండి ఇక్కడ, look at this. What is contingent asset? A possible asset arising from their existence will be confirmed only after occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more. Okay na? Contingent liability, a possible obligation that arises from, which may arise in future depending on occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more uncertain. So both, if you observe, both are exactly same. Simple logic is, if this is positive for me, it is an asset. If it is a negative for me, it's a liability. It's a favorable for me, it's an asset. Unfavorable for me is a liability. Where there is a inflow of economic benefits, asset. Where there is a outflow of economic benefit, it's a liability. Clear? Write down. Write some quick notes. Introduction. Write down. Accounting is a language of business. Write some quick notes. Accounting is a language of business. Comma, where all business transactions and events, where all business transactions and events are recorded where all business transactions and events are recorded in a systematic manner. In a systematic manner. In a systematic manner. Full stop. Transactions and events which are confirmed and economic are only recorded and economic are only recorded and economic are only recorded. And economic are only recorded. Whereas non-economic items, this we have learnt in introduction chapter itself, if you remember. Only economic transactions will do, non-economic we don't do, right? Non-economic transactions will be ignored. Non-economic transactions will be ignored. Non-economic transactions will be ignored. Okay, na? Stop. However, there are some other items known as contingent. However, there are some other items known as contingent assets and liabilities. Contingent assets and liabilities, which should also be taken into account. While preparing books of accounts. है ना? चलो, write this, student. Write first heading, contingent asset. Contingent asset. Underline చేసుకోండి. Underline it. Right. Contingent asset may be defined as a possible asset. Contingent asset may be defined as a possible asset that arises from past event and whose existence will be confirmed. A contingent asset may be defined as possible asset that arises from past event and whose existence will be confirmed. and whose existence will be confirmed only after occurrence and non-occurrence of only after occurrence and non-occurrence of one or more only after occurrence and non-occurrence of one or more uncertain future events which are not in the control of enterprise. Control of enterprise. చూసుకోండి see there, look at the key points. చూడండి ఇక్కడ contingent asset అంటే ఏంటి? It's a possible అంటే might become an asset in future, okay, that is arising from past event అంటే past లో ఏదో జరిగింది, okay, whose existence will be confirmed only after occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more uncertain future events. అంటే అది అసెట్ అవుతుందా లేదా అనేది ఫ్యూచర్ మీద డిపెండ్ అయి ఉంటుంది, అండ్ దట్ టు విచ్ ఈస్ నాట్ హోల్లీ విత్ ఇన్ ద కంట్రోల్ ఆఫ్, అంటే ఎంటర్ప్రైజ్ చేతిలో ఏమీ లేదు, నథింగ్ యూ హ్యావ్ ఇన్ యువర్ హ్యాండ్స్, ఇట్ ఈస్ ఆల్ డిపెండింగ్ ఆన్ ద ఫ్యూచర్. క్లియర్? It usually arises from unplanned and unexpected. That gives rise to possible inflow of. Right, second point. Next line. It usually arises from unplanned. It usually arises from unplanned or unexpected events, unplanned or unexpected events that give rise to the possibility of an inflow, that give rise to the possibility of an inflow of economic benefits, economic benefits economic benefits to business entity. Economic benefits to business entity. Okay, this is contingent asset. Good. As per the concept of prudence as well as present accounting standards, a enterprise should not recognize. ఎందుకు? Prudence ఏం చెప్తుంది? Expect all possible losses, ignore all possible gains. Antega? Rasko. Next point. As per the concept of prudence, and accounting standards, as per the concept of prudence and accounting standards, contingent asset should not be recognized. Contingent asset should not be recognized. Anna? Chalo, చూడండి, see here. These assets are uncertain and may arise from claim which an enterprise pursues through legal proceedings. కొన్ని కేసులు పడతాయి. మీరు ఇప్పుడు రీసెంట్గా చూస్తే మంగళి కేసు ఏదో నడుస్తుంది, ఏదో మోసం చేశారు, 150 కోట్లు 200 కోట్లు ఏదో ముంచారని చెప్పి అలా కేసు పడ్డది. ఆ కేసులో డబ్బులు వస్తాయా పోతాయా అనేది ఫ్యూచర్. దెర్ ఈజ్ అన్సర్టనిటీ ఇన్ రియలైజేషన్ ఆఫ్ ద క్లెయిమ్. సో వస్తాయో లేదో తెలియదు కాబట్టి రికగ్నైజ్ చేయొద్దు. It is possible that recognition of contingent may result in recognition of income that may never be realized. However, when the realization of income is virtually certain, then the related asset no longer remains. Right, next line, next point. If the realization of income is virtually certain, if the realization of income is virtually certain, then the related asset no longer remains as, then the related asset no longer remains as contingent asset. The related asset no longer remains as contingent asset. Ante once it is confirmed that definitely we will get a amount, ante it is no more contingent, it is a real asset. Okay, till it is contingent we should not recognize. Chudandi ikkada, a contingent asset need not be disclosed in. Why? Prudence said, loss unte worry avandi, income unte endukra worry avadam. Next point. Contingent asset need not be disclosed in financial statements. Need not be disclosed in financial statements. Okay, full stop. It can be disclosed in notes to accounts, or board of directors reports, if it is probable. Okay na? Next, right, next heading, contingent liability. Contingent liability. చూడండి అన్న, కంటింజెంట్ అసెట్ కి కంటింజెంట్ లయబిలిటీకి ఏం డిఫరెన్స్ లేదురా. కట్ కాపీ పేస్ట్ డెఫినేషన్. ఓన్లీ డిఫరెన్స్ ఏంటంటే కంటింజెంట్ అసెట్ ఏమో క్యాష్ ఇన్ఫ్లో, అంటే అది పాజిటివ్ మనకి. కంటింజెంట్ లయబిలిటీ ఇస్ ఏ క్యాష్ అవుట్ఫ్లో. చూడండి ఒకసారి డెఫినేషన్. కంటింజెంట్ లయబిలిటీ కెన్ బి డిఫైన్డ్ యాజ్ పాసిబుల్ ఆబ్లిగేషన్ దట్ అరైజెస్ ఫ్రమ్ existence of which will be confirmed by occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more uncertain future not within the control of same story. Okay na? Present obligation that arises from past events and is not recognized because it is not probable that an outflow of embodying the economic benefits will require to be settled and reliable estimate cannot be made, and you cannot exactly estimate how much is the loss. But once you can start estimating, go for a provision. Okay, same story. Virtually certain, probable and possible, remote. Virtually certain, provision. Probable and possible, notes. Remote, ignore. Clear? Ask me. A contingent liability can be defined as a contingent liability can be defined as right, next line, a bit. A possible obligation, a bit, two definitions unnai danlo. A bit you write first. A possible obligation a possible obligation that arises from past events, a possible obligation that arises from past events, the existence of which will be confirmed, the existence of which will be confirmed only on, the existence of which will be confirmed only on occurrence or non-occurrence, only on occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more, occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more uncertain future events, uncertain future events not wholly within the control of enterprise, not wholly within the control of enterprise, not wholly within the control of enterprise, or B-bit, a present obligation that arises from a present obligation that arises from past events, a present obligation that arises from past events, but it is not recognized, because it is not probable, that an outflow of economic resources will be required to settle the obligation, or a reliable estimate cannot be made, or a reliable estimate cannot be made, or a reliable estimate cannot be made. Okay, so you are unable to make a reliable estimate. Clear? Next. చూడండి, a contingent liability is a possible obligation arising from which may in future depending on occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more future events. A contingent liability may also be a present obligation which arise from, okay, so it is a possible obligation or it can be a present obligation. ఈ two words గుర్తుపెట్టుకోండి, and both happens because of past and the past. Clear? So this is what is the definition of contingent liability. ఏం చెప్పాడు చూడండి, ఏ enterprise should not recognize contingent asset, we don't recognize, contingent liability also will not recognize. However, it is required to be disclosed in the notes to account unless possibility of outflow of resources embodying economic benefits are, okay, let's go next point. An enterprise should not recognize, a enterprise should not recognize contingent liability in the balance sheet. A enterprise should not recognize contingent liability in the balance sheet. Okay na? Next point. However, it is required to be disclosed in notes to accounts. Okay na? Next, చూడండి ఇక్కడ, if it becomes probable that economic or future economic benefits will be required for an item previously dealt with as a contingent liability, a provision is recognized in the financial statements for which in the change in the probability occurs. అంటే till yesterday it was contingent, today it is confirmed, yes it will happen. Example, someone filed a case against us, మన గూడ్స్ వాడాడు, వాడిన తర్వాత he got some damage. ఎగ్జాంపుల్, వాడు ఏదో ఫోన్ వాడాడు, ఫోన్ వాడుతుంటే ఫోన్ పగిలిపోయింది, he lost his ear, he filed a case against Apple. As soon as he filed a case against Apple, is Apple liable to pay? No. Case నడుస్తుంది, it's a contingent liability. We came to know that we lose the case. We came to know that we lose the case. Provision create చేసుకో, case lost. Contingent liability will become liability because we lost the case. Case started contingent, case progressed where we came to know that we may lose, provision lost. Contingent liability will become actual liability. Clear? Let's go next point. If it becomes probable that an outflow of economic benefits, if it becomes probable that an outflow of economic benefits is required, then a provision is made, a provision is made okay na? That's it. This is what is contingent asset and contingent liability. Okay na? Chalo, right, next heading, contingent liability and liability. Contingent liability and liability. See, now you know what is contingent liability and you know what is liability also. Now can you tell me the difference between contingent liability and a liability? What is contingent liability? It may or may not happen. Liability happened, already happened. Contingent liability we cannot estimate. Liability we can estimate. Contingent liability depends on unforeseen future events based on past. Liability confirmed, we have to pay. Okay, just see here. A distinction between liability and contingent liability is generally based on the judgment of the management. It's a personal judgment. Okay. The liability is defined as a present financial obligation of an enterprise which arised from. Until liability is there, present obligation is there. How much we know confirmly. Say for example, I took a bank loan. I took a bank loan of 10 lakhs. Tell me, how much is liability? 10 lakhs. So it's a confirm. I know how much I have to pay. But contingent ala undadu. How much I have to pay, I don't know. Okay. The settlement of liability results in an outflow from the enterprise economic benefits. And if I have to pay a bank loan, shall I pay money or not? How much do you know or not? So exactly you know how much. On the other hand, in case of contingent liability, either economic outflow of resources to settle the obligation is not probable, nor the amount expected to be settled the obligation cannot be with sufficient. అది ఎంతో తెలీదు, ఎప్పుడు పే చేయాలో తెలీదు, బట్ లయబిలిటీ కన్ఫర్మ్డ్. ఓకేనా, రాసుకోండి. ఫస్ట్ పాయింట్ the distinction between liability and contingent liability is generally based on judgment of management. Is generally based on judgment of management. Second point, a liability is a present obligation. A liability is a present obligation which arises from past event. A liability is a present obligation which arises from past events, which is confirmed. Whereas contingent is possible or probable obligation which cannot be measured with sufficient reliability, with sufficient reliability. With sufficient reliability. ఓకేనా, నెక్స్ట్ చూడండి. ఇక్కడ ఎగ్జాంపుల్స్ ఆఫ్ కంటింజెంట్ లయబిలిటీస్ ఆర్ క్లెయిమ్ అగేన్స్ట్ ద ఎంటర్ప్రైజ్ నాట్ అక్నాలెడ్జ్ యాజ్ డెట్స్. ఇంకా అది డెట్ అవ్వలేదు, బట్ సమ్మన్ హెస్ క్లెయిమ్డ్ అగేన్స్ట్ ఇట్. యాజ్ ఐ టోల్డ్ యూ, సమ్మన్ ఫైల్డ్ ఏ కేస్ ఆన్ మీ saying that I used your products, I got this damage, I want 1 crore compensation. పే చేయాలా? ఎప్పుడు పే చేయాలి? కోర్టు జడ్జిమెంట్ ఇస్తే దెన్ ఐ విల్ థింక్. అప్ టు దట్ ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ ఏ లయబిలిటీ. గ్యారంటీ is given in respect to third parties. Someone has taken a loan, నేను గ్యారంటీ ఇచ్చా. When my liability will come? If that fellow doesn't pay. ఇప్పుడు నా ఫ్రెండ్ ఉన్నాడు, వాడు బ్యాంక్ లోన్ తీసుకున్నాడు. For that fellow I gave guarantee. That fellow did not pay. What happens to me? I have to pay. When my liability arises? When that fellow did not pay. If he pays, no liability. ఎంతో చెప్పండి? తెలియదు. వాడు పే చేయకపోతే then my liability will arise. Liability in respect of bills discounted and statutory liabilities under dispute. In addition to the present obligation that are recognized as liabilities in the balance sheet, enterprises are also required to disclose by way of, okay, last point. Liabilities are disclosed in balance sheet. Liabilities are disclosed in balance sheet, whereas contingent liabilities are not disclosed in balance sheet. Liabilities are disclosed in balance sheet, whereas contingent liabilities are not disclosed in balance sheet. Comma, they are disclosed by way of notes. Okay na? Last, right, contingent liability and provision. Last point. Okay na? Chalo చూడండి రా. What is a provision? I already told you, when we make a provision is when you have some degree of estimation. చెప్పాను కదా, కేస్ ఫైల్ అయింది. కెన్ యూ టెల్ మీ హౌ మచ్ యూ విల్ లూజ్? తెలియదు. కేస్ ప్రోగ్రెస్ అవుతుంది. వీఆర్ థింకింగ్ దాట్ ఎస్ ఓడిపోతామేమో, జడ్జ్ మే ఫైనస్ 1 crore ఏమో. ఓకే, ఆ జరిగే సిచ్యువేషన్స్ ని బట్టి you will estimate that yes, we are going to lose, we might be fined for 1 crore. అలా సిగ్నల్స్ ఉన్నప్పుడు we go for, student, any amount written off or retained by way of providing for depreciation, renewal or diminution in the value of asset, retained by way of providing of any known for which the amount cannot be determined with substantial అక్యురేట్గా చెప్పలేను కానీ చెప్పగలుగుతా, ఓడిపోతా. ఓకే, లైబిలిటీ వస్తుంది, ఎంత తెలియదు. ప్రీవియస్ కేసెస్లో, ఇలాంటి కేసెస్లో దే ఆర్ ఫైండ్ 1 crore. నాకెంత పడవచ్చు? 1 crore, లెస్ దెన్ 1 crore, మోర్ దెన్ 1 crore, ఎంతైనా పడవచ్చు. ఐ కెనాట్ ఎగ్జాక్ట్లీ టెల్ యూ, బట్ పడుతుంది. ఓకే, ఇక్కడ కన్సర్వేటిజం విల్ కమ్ ఇంటు ద పిక్చర్. When you cannot estimate exactly, but you know that will happen, create a provision. Student, differences. Provision ki, contingent liability ki. Provision is a present liability of an uncertain amount which can be measured reliably with substantial degree of. Best example, provision for bad and doubtful debts, 10%. నీ ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్ చెప్తుంది. ఓకేనా? కంటింజెంట్ liability is a possible obligation that may or may not crystallize depending on the occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more. Provision meets recognition, contingent liability fails to meet. That's the reason this will not come in balance sheet. Provision is recognized when an enterprise has a present obligation arising from past events, an economic outflow of economic benefits is probable and reliable estimate can be made. Contingent liability includes present obligation that do not meet the recognition criteria, but either it is not probable that settlement of those obligations will be required, outflow of economic benefits, or amount cannot be reliably estimated. If the management estimates that it is probable that the settlement of an enterprise obligation will result in an outflow of economic benefits, it recognizes the provision in. అంటే వాళ్ళకి రిలయబుల్గా తెలిస్తే yes this much will go ante then they'll put in the balance sheet. If a management estimates that it is less likely that any economic benefit will outflow the firm to settle the obligation, it discloses the obligation as a contingent. Clear? So this is the difference between provision and liability. మనకు ఎలాగో contingent liability definition తెలుసు, provision గురించి points రాద్దాం. Okay, write down the points. First one, a provision means any amount written off or retained by way of providing for depreciation, or diminution, diminution, diminution in the value of asset, or any known liability, where amount cannot be determined with substantial accuracy, అంటే నేను యాక్యురేట్ గా చెప్పలేను బట్ చెప్తా, దట్ ఈస్ కాల్డ్ ప్రొవిజన్. ఓకే, సెకండ్ పాయింట్, ప్రొవిజన్ ఈజ్ అ ప్రెజెంట్ liability. Provision is a present liability of uncertain amount. Provision is a present liability of uncertain amount which can be measured reliably. Provision is a present liability of uncertain amount which can be measured reliably by using substantial degree of estimate. Substantial degree of estimate. Example, provision for bad and doubtful debts. 10%, comma, provision for depreciation 10%, provision for bad and doubtful debts 10%, provision for depreciation 10%. Understood? Next point, provision meets recognition criteria. అంటే recognition criteria అంటే it's yes, it will fit in balance sheet. Last point, if management estimates if management estimates outflow of economic benefits, if management estimates the outflow of economic benefits, comma, it recognizes the provision in balance sheet. It recognizes the provision in balance sheet. It recognizes the provision in balance sheet. Done? That's it. This is what is contingent asset, liability, provision and normal liability. Clear? Chalo, let's do quick bits on this. Some true or false avanni adigadu vaadu chudam. A contingent liability need not be disclosed in financial statements. Not always. ఒకవేళ contingent liability real అయితే provision. Okay, false. Need not be అనేది తప్పు. Need not be అనేది తప్పు. False. Okay, but contingent liability can be required if it is estimated and you know that. A provision fails to meet the recognition criteria. False. A claim that an enterprise is pursuing through a legal process where the outcome is uncertain, it's a contingent liability. A claim that an enterprise is pursuing through a legal process where the outcome is uncertain. Outcome what may or may not happen. That is a contingent. No. It can be a contingent asset or it can be a contingent. Outcome is uncertain ra. Outcome uncertain ante outcome em avvachu? Positive avvachu, negative avvachu. Positive aithe asset, negative aithe nu dan liability ani enduku antunnam? Asset kuda avvachu kada outcome. So it is a false. Where it is probable that the firm will need to pay off the obligation, it gives rise to contingent liability. Malli, when it is probable that the firm will need to pay off the obligation, this gives rise to contingent liability. Is liability. Contingent liability kada adi. Liability. See, when it is probable that the firm will need to pay, pakka it has to pay. Entadi? Liability. Adi contingent liability kaadu. Okay, false. Present financial obligation of enterprise which arises from the past event is termed as contingent liability. Present financial obligation of an enterprise which arises from that is a contingent liability. False. Idu kuda liability. Both are liabilities. All are false. Okay. Next. Contingent asset usually arises from unplanned and unexpected events that gives rise to possible inflow, possible outflow. Inflow. Asset kada? Inflow. So answer is A. In an inflow of economic benefits is probable that then a contingent asset is disclosed in financial statements, report of approving authority, cash flow statement. Contingent asset eppudu balance sheet lo chupiyam. We have to show it in the this is even though the inflow is probable until it is virtually certain. Virtually certain aitene it will go to the balance sheet. In case of either outflow of resources to settle the obligation is not probable nor expected to be settled, the obligation cannot be measured with substantial reliability. Provision, we need substantial reliability. So it is not liability, it is not provision. It is contingent liability. Enduko cheppandi? Not probable. Amount expected to be settled, the obligation cannot be measured with sufficient. If you can measure, it is provision. Okay. Present liability of uncertain amount. Present liability of uncertain amount which can be measured reliably by using a substantial degree of estimate. Provision. That is the definition of provision kada? In financial statements, contingent liability is not recognized. Okay na? థియరిటికల్ క్వశ్చన్స్ అడుగుతారు. డిఫరెన్స్ బిట్వీన్ ప్రొవిజన్ అండ్ లయబిలిటీ అండ్ కంటింజెంట్ లయబిలిటీ. ఓకేనా, దట్స్ ఇట్. దీస్ ఆర్ థియరిటికల్ ఆస్పెక్ట్స్ ఆఫ్ యువర్ one small chapter or unit called contingent assets and liabilities. Okay na? Tomorrow we'll do accounting policies. Clear? So 1:30 out. Take a break.